For USAID, even if the folks come back to work, they may not have anywhere to go. With us now, Tom Dupree, constitutional law attorney, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under George W. Bush. The court has admitted you as an expert on these matters. I am not, but I always remember that line, possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yes.
If the doors are locked, does it matter whether the people can be laid off or not?
That's a good question. I would say if you can't get into your building, do you really have a job, right? No, you're right. And look, the fact is that all presidents, not just Trump, but Obama and Biden, tried to do a lot of things by way of executive order. You know, they would just sign a pen and say it shall be done. And what happens? The other side goes running to the court and tries to get a judge to stop them. So we've seen this show before. I think what's different about the Trump administration is, number one, they're moving much faster than any prior administration has on multiple fronts. Are they going to suffer some defeats in the court? Yes, they will. But keep in mind that the cases that are being decided now are the first round of battle. A lot of these issues, particularly executive orders concerning things like birthright citizenship, those are ultimately going to percolate and make their way up to the United States Supreme Court, which, of course, has the final say in all of this stuff.
As we see Donald Trump sort of reaching far deeper and far faster, as you point out, than any president has reached before, fair to say that one way or the other, the presidency is going to be redefined?
I think so. Look, I think all presidents redefine the presidency to some extent. I think Trump a lot more so than other presidents, precisely because he is taking unilateral executive action in so many different respects in such a muscular and aggressive way that it can't help but make new law, because the courts have to deal with this. They have to figure out, well, can he do this? Can he do that? And in the course of deciding what Trump can do and can't do, the courts are going to be redefining the powers of the presidency, which will govern all future presidents.
Okay, so it's not just USAID. It appears as though he's going to take on the Department of Education. We saw a video of Democrats coming to the Department of Education and knocking on the door and demanding to get in. This is Donald Trump talking about that moment today, specifically Maxine Waters.
Well, I see the same ones. I see Maxine Waters, a lowlife. I see, you know, all these people. They don't love our country. They don't love our country. We want great education. So they rank 40 countries in education. We're ranked dead last, dead last. But the good news is we're number one in one category. You know what that is? Cost per pupil.
So rule number one, Trump always wins. Rule number two, Trump's superpower is making his political enemies do and defend things that are unpopular, which the Department of Education is. What in the end does the court, are the courts going to actually have to decide on these mass changes to the federal government?
A number of things. I think one thing they're going to have to decide are these mass changes things that a president of the United States can do unilaterally as opposed to acting with the approval of Congress. That's one of the criticisms that we've heard, is that these changes Trump are making, these are things that have to go through Congress and get approved by Congress. A president can't just do it with a stroke of a pen. We're seeing what's happened. But look, the fact is that even if the courts stop Trump on one or two of three of these things, he's doing 100 of these things, and they can't get them all. So I think regardless of how it plays out, yeah, he's going to flood the zone.
Real specifically on the, and I'm just thinking about sort of what he's doing and what the court could order. I guess courts can order anything, but we're here seeing these temporary restraining orders. What, they're going to order, you must allow all these people back to work?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you're a court, you're very challenged, because courts have to fashion what you call a remedy in the law. In other words, they basically have to say, here's what you have to do, here's what you must do. And that can be really difficult to do, because you got to specify it. I mean, do you have to say you have to put the sign back up on the agency's door? Do you have to unlock the doors? I mean, courts can't do that. They're not equipped to do that. I think at the end of the day, it really is the administration looking at what the court said and then figuring out how they're going to conform their conduct to the law.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.